It was late afternoon, and the house smelled like rosemary and garlic, his favorite. I had just finished setting the table when I heard the gravel crunch in the driveway. I smiled without thinking. That small, automatic smile I'd practiced for years, the one that said, "Welcome home, I've been waiting." I smoothed my dress, checked the roast, glanced at the clock. Everything was warm, calm, familiar. And then, the front door opened, and something in the air shifted. He didn't come in alone. She walked beside him like she belonged there. Tall, polished, her heels tapping against my floors like she owned the place. My stomach dropped before my mind caught up. I blinked, still holding the serving spoon, waiting for him to explain. Or at least say hello. But he didn't even look at me. Not a glance, not a word. Like I was air, less than air. Like I'd already vanished. I finally asked, not because I wanted the answer, but because the silence was too loud. "Who is she?" My voice was cold, clipped, unfamiliar. He smiled then, and I'll never forget it. That smirk wasn't just cruel, it was rehearsed. "She's two things," he said, "my lawyer and my future wife." Just like that. My breath caught somewhere between my ribs. Then he tossed the divorce papers on the counter like a grocery list and walked past me like I never mattered. I didn't chase after him. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just stood there staring at the front door he didn't bother to close behind him. The wind drifted in, carrying the scent of her perfume. Something expensive, sharp, uninvited. The papers sat on the counter, still fluttering slightly from where he'd dropped them. And me? I was frozen in my own kitchen, holding a spoon like a fool, as my marriage unraveled in the space of 5 minutes. My chest ached, but I couldn't breathe deep enough to feel it. I kept replaying it over and over like maybe I'd misunderstood, but no matter how many times I rewound the moment in my head, it always ended the same, with that smirk, that sentence, that sound of him walking away like I was already erased. After everything I gave him, all those years, I'd built a life around him. I followed him through every job change, every move, every bad idea disguised as ambition. I was the glue. I was the net. I was the one who stayed. And he discarded me like a used napkin. No warning, no guilt, just bold, final betrayal, with legal paperwork to match. I stared at the pages but didn't touch them. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was rage, pure electric rage. Beneath the shock, something started to crack open. Not pain, not yet. Just the beginning of something colder, something sharper. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that exact moment, was the start of a very different story. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched dinner and those damn papers. The house was silent, but my mind wasn't. It kept flashing through birthdays, holidays, hospital visits, all the moments I stood by him when no one else would. I thought about the years I dimmed myself so he could shine. All the sacrifices, all the silence. And this? This was how he repaid me? With a lawyer in heels and a signature line? I should have fallen apart. He probably expected that. Maybe that's what men like him count on, that we'll collapse, cry, beg. But I didn't. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I got up and made a cup of tea. And while the kettle hissed, I made a different kind of decision. I wasn't going to fight fire with emotion. I was going to fight it with precision. He had no idea who he'd just tried to bury. No idea what I still had in my back pocket. As I sipped that first bitter mouthful, I whispered it aloud, just once. A promise to myself. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. He thought he had the upper hand. He thought I'd sign, fade, vanish. But I wasn't going anywhere. I had names, memories, secrets, and time. And the best part? He wouldn't even see it coming. The morning light hit different that day. Colder. Unforgiving. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in the same clothes from the night before, holding those papers like they were made of ice. My eyes were swollen, but dry. The crying had passed. Now it was just stillness. That heavy kind. The kind that makes you feel like even your bones are tired. I kept thinking, how do you go from everything to nothing overnight? But deep down, I knew. He'd been leaving me long before he actually walked out. It wasn't just the silence or the cold glances. It was the way he stopped needing me, stopped noticing. I remembered the dinners I cooked that went untouched, the stories I tried to tell that died mid-sentence because he was too busy checking his phone. The way he stopped touching me, not out of anger, worse, out of disinterest. And I ignored it. I dressed it up as stress, as routine, as life. But really, he'd been slowly packing his bags inside his heart. I just hadn't wanted to see it. But now I did. I saw it all, clear as glass, and it broke something open in me. Not just grief, not just rage, something deeper. A knowing. I wasn't going to be a woman he used to be married to. I wasn't going to disappear into some sad story whispered at cocktail parties. No. I was going to be the woman he regretted losing, every single day of his life. And that started with one word I refused to write on those papers, my signature. I placed the papers in a drawer, not out of denial, but strategy. He wanted a quick end, a clean escape, but he forgot who I was before I became his wife. He forgot I used to sit in boardrooms, not just living rooms, that I once negotiated contracts, not just dinner plans. Somewhere along the way, I let that version of me fade, buried her beneath his ambitions, his needs. But now I needed her back. Because this wasn't just a divorce. This was war, and I was waking up. Before I called anyone, I sat at my desk and made a list. Names, numbers, accounts I remembered from the early years. I knew more than he thought. I always had. I just never needed to use it. Until now. Then, I picked up the phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade, Miranda Taylor, the best divorce attorney in the city, sharp, relentless, and expensive. She picked up on the second ring. "Clarice?" she said. "It's been years." I smiled for the first time in 24 hours. "Too long. I need you." By the end of that call, something in me had shifted. My hands still trembled, but not from weakness, from momentum. Miranda didn't ask if I was sure. She just asked for the details. Dates, behaviors, assets. I told her everything. The late nights, the sudden trips, the way his credit card statements started hiding behind passwords. And when I mentioned the name of the woman, his lawyer fiancé, Miranda actually laughed. "Oh, sweetheart," she said. "He has no idea what he's done." That evening, I didn't cry. I didn't pace or beg the universe for answers. I opened a bottle of wine, poured exactly one glass, and sat with my laptop. Not to scroll through memories, no. I was building something. I started compiling everything I knew. The off-the-books accounts he thought I'd never notice, the shell corporations he joked about with his friends when he thought I wasn't listening, the real estate he put under his cousin's name. I didn't need revenge. I needed leverage. Piece by piece, I built my case. Quietly, carefully. The old Clarice, the one who read contracts like novels and didn't blink at balance sheets. She was back, and she was furious. But more than that, she was focused. I knew I couldn't confront him yet. That's what he'd expect. He thought I'd fall apart, get emotional, give up. But I wasn't playing his game. I was building my own. And when it was time, I'd move with precision and strike where it would hurt most. I looked at my reflection in the window that night. Tired, yes, but not defeated. There was steel in my spine again. And underneath all the hurt, all the betrayal, was something new. Power. He thought he was leaving a woman who'd crumble. But what he didn't know is, he left a woman who remembers everything, who knows where the bodies are buried, and who has nothing left to lose. The first thing I did was move out. Not because I couldn't stand the sight of our house, though God knows it reeked of betrayal, but because I needed space. Space to think, to plan, to disappear. I let him believe I was crushed. I let the silence stretch long enough for him to assume I was licking my wounds. Good. Let him underestimate me. I checked into a quiet boutique hotel under my maiden name. No calls, no confrontations, just focus. Every morning, I met with Miranda. We went through statements, business filings, real estate records. I remembered things he didn't think I'd notice. A wire transfer here, a land title there. It was all starting to form a picture. A very illegal picture. Miranda kept raising her eyebrows. "Clarice, this is substantial." I nodded. He wanted to erase me. I planned to return the favor. There was no rush. I wanted it to be airtight. When I struck, it would be clean, legal, and permanent. In the afternoons, I reactivated the part of my life I'd left behind. The professional me. I reached out to old contacts from before Leonardo. People who remembered my sharpness, my instincts. One of them offered me a short-term consulting role. Nothing flashy, but enough to remind me who I was. I took it. Every dollar I made felt like a small rebellion. Every signature I wrote that wasn't his last name felt like a declaration. I wasn't lost. I was rising. Leonardo didn't call. Not once. And that was perfect. He thought I was retreating. He thought the silence meant surrender. Meanwhile, Miranda and I were dissecting his empire like surgeons. Every hidden account, every shadow LLC, every shady consulting fee he shuffled through that tech company he claimed didn't make a profit. We found properties listed under a college friend's name, a friend who, ironically, now owed me a favor. The man built his kingdom on secrets, and I was turning on the lights, but I didn't stop there. I made a few more calls, names Leonardo would never expect me to know, let alone contact. One of them was Marco D'Alessio, a former investor Leonardo once double-crossed and left holding a very public scandal. I met Marco at a quiet cafe downtown. He was skeptical at first, but when I laid out the plan, what I knew, what I had, his eyes lit up. "He always underestimated you," he said, "just like he did me." We shook hands. We were no longer victims. We were allies. By the time I returned to my hotel that evening, I felt sharp, not angry, not even bitter, just honed. Every lie Leonardo had built his new life on was standing on a trap door, and I held the lever. I sat by the window watching the city move below, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a smile. Not out of revenge, but clarity. I wasn't chasing justice. I was preparing the truth. And truth, when delivered with the right timing, doesn't just sting, it destroys. I stayed silent. No texts, no social media. I became a ghost with a plan. Every move I made was behind closed doors, every meeting cloaked in professionalism and strategy. I knew if I made noise too soon, he'd start protecting himself. But he was too busy celebrating his freedom, too busy flaunting his new fiancée in those staged, over-filtered photos. I watched from a distance. I took notes. I knew their weaknesses, their timelines, their vanity. They were writing their own downfall in real time. I started preparing documents of my own, not just for court, but for contingency, letters, evidence, a full chain of command in case things got messy. I didn't just want to win, I wanted to make it undeniable. No room for gaslighting, no spin, no clever speeches from his lawyer lover, just facts, just receipts. And every page I added to that folder made my pulse steadier. I wasn't building a case anymore. I was building closure, on my terms. By the end of that week, Miranda looked at me across her desk and said, "We're ready." I nodded, calm and cold, not because I didn't feel anything, but because I'd already felt it all. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the grief. Now I was standing on something stronger, purpose. He thought I'd stay broken. He thought silence meant surrender. But silence? Silence is just the breath before the strike. The morning of the hearing, I woke before the alarm. I didn't need it. My body was humming, not with fear, but with clarity. I took my time getting ready. My suit was soft charcoal with a navy blouse underneath, understated, but powerful. I pulled my hair back, applied my makeup slowly, precisely. Not to impress him, to remind myself of who I was. This wasn't the woman he left in a kitchen with cold dinner and divorce papers. This was the woman he never saw coming. I arrived at the courthouse 15 minutes early. Miranda was already there, flipping through her notes with that signature confidence that had terrified CEOs twice my size. "You look calm," she said, smiling. "I am," I replied, and I meant it, because I had nothing to hide, and he had nothing to stand on. The room was smaller than I expected. Intimate. No hiding in corners, no grand gestures, just truth, raw and well documented, ready to be spoken aloud. He walked in 10 minutes late. Of course he did. And with her. She wore a smug little smile and a designer suit that probably cost more than my retainer. Leonardo looked at me like I was a footnote. But I didn't look away. I looked directly at them. Not with hate, not with grief, just with stillness. The kind that unsettles. The kind that says, "You have no idea how much I know." And based on the way her smile faltered for just a second, I think she felt it. When the judge asked if we were ready to begin, Miranda stood first. No dramatics, no show, just precision. She presented a timeline, clean, chronological, brutal in its honesty. Financial documents, tax filings, wire transfers, offshore accounts under fabricated names. She walked the court through Leonardo's carefully constructed house of cards, brick by brick, until there was nowhere left for him to stand. The room felt heavier with every page she turned, and I just sat there, still as stone. Leonardo shifted in his seat. His fiancée whispered something in his ear, her tone clipped and tense. That smile? Gone. The color drained from her face with each exhibit Miranda introduced. She hadn't known. That much was clear. She thought she was walking into a simple divorce, a quick victory. She didn't realize she was dating the crime scene. At one point, Leonardo leaned forward and tried to speak. The judge raised a hand. "You'll have your turn." But his voice, when it came, had already lost its confidence. Then came the best part. Miranda presented the documentation, proving how he'd tried to leave me with nothing. Not just morally, but financially. The properties, the accounts. The deliberate attempt to create a narrative where I was the dependent one, the one who brought nothing to the table. The judge raised her eyebrows. "Mrs. Ferreira," she said to me, "you've been more than patient." I met her eyes and nodded, the smallest smile forming at the edge of my lips. I wasn't vindictive. I was prepared. The judge's ruling was swift. I was granted a substantial portion of our shared assets, not just what was fair, but what was hidden. She awarded me ownership of one of his most lucrative commercial properties, the one he'd tried to hide behind a maze of shell companies. And then, like the final stone dropping in a quiet lake, came the kicker. Full public disclosure of his unethical practices. Everything we'd uncovered would be submitted to the regulatory board. No backroom deals, no cover-ups. Leonardo sat frozen. His lawyer fiancée? She didn't look at him. Not once. Her expression was blank, but her body had shifted away from him. Subtle, but loud. The distance between them grew by the second. She realized she wasn't the prize. She was part of the fallout. I watched her pack her files in silence, her hands just slightly unsteady. He reached for her elbow, whispering something low. She pulled away. Not a word, just the quiet dignity of someone finally understanding they bet on the wrong man. As I stepped out of the courtroom, the sun felt different on my skin. I could breathe. Deeply. Fully. It wasn't just a legal win, it was a reclamation. Of truth. Of voice. Of self. And while he sat inside that building with the weight of his arrogance crumbling around him, I walked away, not triumphant, but free. And yet, something told me his lesson wasn't over. Not yet. In the weeks that followed, his empire started to crack. Quiet at first, an audit here, a client pulling out there. Then the lawsuits began. Investors wanted answers. Employees started talking. One by one, the secrets he used to control unraveled under scrutiny. He tried to spin it, of course. blamed the system, blamed betrayal, blamed anyone but himself. But the truth had no interest in protecting him anymore. It was out there now, breathing on its own. And it was loud. I didn't watch it unfold with glee. I watched it with distance, like someone finally waking up from a long, disorienting dream. I had better things to do. I was building something real. I launched my own consulting firm, small at first, but mine. My name on the door, my values in the work. Clients came, referrals from people who remembered me, respected me. I didn't need to be anyone's wife to hold a room. I was Clarice Ferreira again, fully. I bought a beautiful apartment, nothing flashy, just light, space, and peace. I filled it with plants, with books, with music. With friends who stayed late and laughed loudly, with silence that comforted rather than punished. I even adopted a rescue dog, a quiet, nervous little creature with tired eyes and a gentle heart. We healed together, day by day, walk by walk. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, authentically, unapologetically. And for the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt whole. Some nights I'd sit by the window with a glass of wine and let myself reflect, not on the pain, but on the clarity that followed. I no longer wondered why he did it. I stopped trying to make sense of senseless choices. He didn't cheat because I wasn't enough. He cheated because he never learned how to value something real. That wasn't my burden to carry anymore. I let it go, not all at once, but piece by piece. The way you unpack old boxes and decide what never belonged to you in the first place. The messages started trickling in after that. First through mutual acquaintances, then directly, little feelers. Hope you're doing well. Maybe we could talk sometime. As if time diluted betrayal. As if the man who shattered everything could reappear as something familiar. But I didn't engage, I didn't rage, I didn't even reply. That's the power of healing. It makes silence feel like an answer. A full sentence, a closed door. Then one night, it came. A message from him. Direct, unfiltered. I made a mistake. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time, not because I was tempted, but because it confirmed everything. He was circling back to the thing he discarded, not out of love, but loss. He wasn't missing me. He was missing control, the access, the stability, the version of himself he saw reflected in my loyalty. But I'd stopped being that mirror. I didn't reply to his message. I didn't even draft a response. I just stared at it, let out the softest laugh, and deleted it. No drama, no grand finale, just a clean, quiet refusal. That's the thing about freedom. It doesn't scream. It simply exits the room and doesn't come back. And I had no interest in revisiting the ruins. Not when I'd built something better from the ashes. Not when peace finally lived in my bones. I closed my laptop, got up from the couch, and walked into the kitchen. The same ritual I once performed while waiting for him. But this time, I made tea for myself. Just me. No performance, no waiting. Just warmth. Just presence. I stood in the glow of my own space, and for the first time, I didn't feel like someone's past. I felt like my own future, and that to me was the real verdict. He left me for his lawyer, but in the end, I gave him a sentence he'll never forget.